polling stations here in Turkey have opened. Over 190,000 polling stations throughout the country in more than 80 provinces. And this could be President Tayyip Recep Erdogan's toughest political fight in his political career. He's facing a united opposition made up of 6 parties, and they are really breathing under his neck and giving him or threatening to overseat him and overseat his party. President Erdogan, who's been in some sort of political office in more than 2 decades, is up for the fight of his political career. What to expect? Who's running, and everything else. We'll be discussing this with Yusuf Erim, TRT editor-at-large here in Istanbul. What should we expect today in this election?
I think we can expect a very tight, hard-fought race. I mean, all the polls show the 2 major candidates, the incumbent President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the opposition alliance's candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, within 1, maximum 2 points of each other going into this morning. Ballots opened at 8. They're going to close at 5 p.m. local time. We'll probably expect a result late tonight, maybe the wee hours of Monday morning, but whatever the result is, it's going to be very close because both sides are behind their candidates, and it's basically on razor's edge who's going to win this election.
The opposition hit Mr. Erdogan on several issues, among them uncontrollable inflation, a dire economy, as well as immigrants here in Turkey, which have exceeded 3.5 million immigrants in the country. What are the most pressing issues, and how convincing are the convince the voters here in Turkey of these issues, and they should topple Mr. Erdogan because of these issues?
Well, I think there are 3 major issues. As you stated, the economy and inflation, that's number 1 on the minds, affecting the daily life of the more than 80 million Turks living in the country. We've seen inflation rise over the past 2 years. This is no secret. The Turkish president has been instituting a low interest rate policy, trying to spur economic growth, trying to support manufacturing, supporting exports. And he's hoping that this transition in the long term will grow the Turkish economy, make it a more integral part of global supply lines. As the pandemic has shaken these supply lines, the war in Ukraine has fractured logistic lines, and he's hoping to get more of a market share going forward. And he feels that by growing, by creating companies that have economies of scale, being able to provide on a global level, he'll meet that need. But what he's experiencing right now seems to be a growing pain of that transition. He needs to weather that storm right now. And he's hoping that he can get out of this high inflation environment probably in the next 6 months to 1 year. Now, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu going to come with a much more orthodox economic policy, one that we see with more higher interest rates, price stability. In the short term, this will be a band-aid for the Turkish economy, but it'll also sacrifice growth. That'll be a trade-off. So for the voters, it depends on what type of economic policy you want. Second, migration, very, very important. 3.5 million Syrian refugees, probably close to 5 million refugees in all, many migrants here. Kılıçdaroğlu is saying that he's going to send these migrants back to Syria. He wants to normalize with Assad. Erdogan has been in some form, his administration has been in some form of talks, but very, very slow walking that normalization. We shouldn't even call it normalization. We should call it bringing dialogue up to a transactional level. And the Turkish president recently stated that it's not safe and secure to send the refugees back yet, so he's not in any rush. And the third major issue, earthquake recovery, relief. Millions of people affected, a massive region rocked by twin earthquakes February 6. Erdogan was criticized for the state's response, but he has been undertaking a massive rebuilding project. So it's going to be very important to see how people in the earthquake region are voting.
Well, let's talk about President Erdogan's foreign policy. How might the foreign policy of the Republic of Turkey change if Mr. Erdogan loses the election?
Well, when we look at Erdogan's foreign policy first, he's a multipolarist. He believes in balancing East and West. He has good relations with the Russian president, with the Chinese president. He's been invited to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as an observer in the past. So this very important balancing act that he tries to put on Turkey being a very important regional power. He also partakes in forward deployed diplomacy, being very active in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, in Azerbaijan, throughout the Caucasus, in the Black Sea, Eastern Mediterranean, war in Ukraine, and that's his style. He wants to be at the table. He wants to be a world leader. Now, when we look at Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the signaling and messaging that we've gotten from his campaign is we're going to see a return to a Western-aligned Turkey going forward, a Turkey that's closer to Washington, closer to Brussels, closer to NATO going forward. And this is the promises that he has given. He wants to prioritize European Union membership going forward, but he has also tried not to antagonize countries like Russia and China too much. But we'll see what happens with the realities of the Turkish presidency. That's a very different thing, talking on the campaign trail versus the realities of the office of the President of the Republic of Turkey are two different things. So we'll see. These are the signaling that we're getting from his camp.
Thank you so much, Yusuf Erim, here in Istanbul. One quick note, 1/6 of voters in Turkey actually live in the city of Istanbul. If any of the candidates, the top 3 candidates going to win, they have to muster 50% plus 1, which means at least 51% of the vote before they are considered a winner of the presidency. Also, results will come out by the end of day Sunday. However, it'll be until later on this month before they're certified. And if no one gets that 50% plus 1 threshold, then we may see a runoff in 2 weeks. In Istanbul, Turkey, Mohammed Al Qasim reporting for the Media Line.